Hi all, I have another amazing game to show you today. Leela ID 62143 is playing the white side of this game against Stockfish 11, and the theme continues looking at anti-Sicilian lines which you might find annoying. So the opening book given here is e4, the Sicilian defense c5, bishop c4, and we're following a recommendation from the book by Grandmaster Alex Kolovich, e6. So this is, if you want to check out that Kingscrusher TV /free anti-Sicilian, e6 is mentioned as the potential antidote. It does provide granite to that bishop, blocks in that bishop. It prepares potentially d5 under good circumstances. We have in this game knight f3, and a6 is a very, very good move to be considered. But also this move, knight f6, is chosen by Stockfish 11, which has a lot of merit as well. a6 was actually the choice of Anatoly Karpov in the game against Costa Agasio 2007. So that was a game which continued d3, knight c6, knight c3, b5, and black had a comfortable game and went on to win that in 29 moves. So here we see knight f6. It looks a little bit more provocative, as though it's walking into e5 potentially. White plays knight c3. The thing is, with e5, black could just play d5, which is a similar mechanic to the game. And with d5, we've got that d7 square to retreat the knight into. And here, it's a comfortable position for black. So okay, so in this game we see knight c3 instead of e5. Knight c3 just protecting that pawn. Okay, now a6. So there are a couple of ideas of a6. First, this rapid fianchetto of this bishop with b5, but also d5 comes with the extra benefit that there's no bishop b5 check now. So these two pawn moves work very well together. So d5 without bishop b5, but also b5 with bishop b7. So very, very nice play from black, which is kind of centered around this bishop, not giving this bishop a nice time of it. We have the move e5 here. If white castles in this position, then d5 comes with benefits to black. So for example, this position, without white being able to play bishop b5 check, if the bishop humbly retreats, then black could gain a bit of space and get a really comfortable position like this. So this bishop, if it's coming here, it's blunted. If d3 play is played, then it's just a very, very comfortable position for black. So b3, for example, bishop d6, very comfortable indeed. So we see actually after a6, the move e5. And Stockfish 11 reacts with an attack of its own. d5, we have e takes f4, d takes c4. So doubling the pawns, okay. This pawn's attacked. We have f g7, bishop takes g7. So maybe Leela ID 62143 thought this was quite good. From a structural perspective, right now, you can say, well, there's a nice little pawn there. There's these double pawns, except there are useful dynamic balances of this. That g-file, this bishop's quite nice on this diagonal. Black's got this bishop without a counterpart. The light square bishop could be a menace, especially on this diagonal. Dennis the Menace on this diagonal, cutting across there. You could think that could easily be supportive of an attack. So we have d3, c takes, and now not the meek idea you might have thought c takes d, but actually Leela plays bishop g5. If c takes d3, I mean, offering the exchange of queens gives white nothing as well, but say this position, knight c6 is a really nice grip over that d4 square, and with b6 this bishop's really comfortable, and black's just got a really nice position here with the advantage. So this is a ploy to sort of mix things up, it seems. We have f6 and the bishop retreats back, hitting that bishop. So offering, potentially a gambit but it's not really, taking this pawn is going to be nasty. So in fact, that pawn is protected. C takes d3. On queen takes d3, just for the record, the exchange of queens, black just plays king f7 here, and has got a fantastic position with the bishop here. So c takes d3. Now here, this is real power play from Stockfish 11. Guess what move is played here, if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay, really targeting this backward pawn here. By the way, let me just censor myself a bit. I just realized I'm not in the center there. Okay. Okay, we have this move, Rook a7. So really nifty, going to d7, potentially to hit that pawn, to add weight to the d4 square. Now, this is a kind of bind position quite easily, going to be a nasty, nasty bind. And Leela, again, tries to mix things up a bit. Whilst this bishop is not looking at c3, it's been blocked by that f6 pawn. There's this very cheeky move played by Leela. I wonder if you can guess, if I give you 5 seconds here, what would you play to try and mix things up? Quite interesting. Try and break this bind on d4. Okay. Yeah, interesting play from both sides in this game. b4. Yeah, trying to sort of undermine black's pawn chain as well. With the king in the centre, it seems to be tactically quite justified to do this as well because of this check here. If white had just carried on routinely with castling, then this binds position is nasty. If white ever tries d4, then just pinning that pawn, this is just nasty. If d4 instead of castling, then again rook d7, it's going to be a nasty pin, and just taking that pawn off with zero compensation for white. This kind of thing is just hopeless for white. These pawns can just crash through. There's no real problem for black, as this shows, this kind of thing shows. So b4, it's a desperate attempt to break out of this positional bind, which Stockfish is getting out of this opening. So c takes is played, queen a4 check. We have rook d7. On b5, white would just tactically just take here, it seems. That's plausible. And if bishop d7, knight d6 check, queen takes b4, and that's great for white. So that's to be avoided. Rook d7, queen takes b4. We have f5, opening up that bishop, tying the queen down at the moment to the knight. It's stronger than rook takes, because then bishop takes b6, and this position would be about equal. Even if black does some structural damage like that, it's not a big problem. This is about equal, this kind of scenario. So we have f5, white castles, knight c6, queen c4, so the queen has to stand around holding the knight at the moment. So for example, if queen takes b6, if queen takes, then just taking here and taking here, and there's no problem. Rook takes d3, holds that bishop. It's not as if white's getting the piece back. So queen c4, rook d6 protecting that knight, d4, and you might think, well, this doesn't seem that bad. White's got in this d4 move. If bishop f4 had been played, by the way, then e5 is possible. Even though the king's in the centre, black's got the resources to support this e5 with bishop e6, and here just taking, and that's great for black. If we look at this again, if knight takes e5, then not bishop takes c4, because check and wins the queen, and this is even. But actually, on knight takes e5, there's bishop takes e5. That's much stronger. So still with that attack on the queen, and this is just winning material. After knight f3 check, taking here, this is just great for black. This is very, very dangerous. You can see there's dangers with rook d1. It's crushing for black, actually. So white has to avoid that, because that g file is, the king's restricted as well. So d4 is played, and now Stockfish just castles, And you might think, hold on a sec, what's this? The rook's holding the knight, but what if the rook's just attacked with bishop f4? And this is what Leela played, bishop f4. The problem also with this pawn on f5, it's threatening f4 now at black's castle. There's support for f4. So if bishop f4 isn't played, then it also suffers f4 from black, which undermines d4. Thanks very much. Black would have a big advantage there. So it seems Stockfish has invited bishop f4 here. And the thing is with this move, now there's a really powerful idea played, a tactical idea and positional implications. Guess what black plays in this position if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? What would you play? Okay, just an exchange sack for one pawn, but factor in other aspects of the position. There's other elements in the position here with this exchange sack. First of all, let's rule out white has to play bishop takes d6. Can't play knight takes d4 because rook takes d4, forks queen and bishop. And if here, we just take that and then we fork the bishop and knight there. So that's winning material. So knight takes d4, we have bishop takes d6, and black gets in this structural damage, knight takes f3. And you can see black's got the bishop power after queen takes d6. And the g-file. So there's a few trump cards here. Bishop without counterpart can come on a dangerous diagonal. Rook can use a dangerous file. The two bishops are really quite nice. They complement each other. They look out for each other's backs, don't they? The bishops are opposite colour. So there's an advantage in them having the bishop pair sometimes. Especially with the open centre here. You can see no pawns in the centre. So the bishops are having a whale of a time here on the crossfire of the diagonals. So we have rook ad1, queen e7, rook d3, and now b5, queen b3, king h8, making way for rook g8 now as a resource. Rook fd1, it seemed logical for white to double the rooks. b4, decentralizing the knight a bit. f4, stopping the knight using the f4 square. Okay, it does close potentially this diagonal. If this bishop wanted that diagonal, it's now locked by its own pawn at that h2 square. Rook d6, but we have bishop e5 now. And it seems there's a misadventure here now by Leela 62143, which is at the time of this video one of the more recent networks. A misadventure, at least at this time control. I wonder what would happen on long time control. But the adventure into black's position here starts with rook c6. It might be more prudent and safer to retreat the rook. So, for example, bishop c7, queen c4 as an example, e5, queen c6. And if black attempts to do anything naughty, then the pinning move. So, yeah, this is kind of annoying, and there's always things potentially like king f1 to e1. So this would be about equal technically, but we have rook c6, so this is an adventurous move. And Stockfish plays a real gravitationally defiant move comes to mind, because you think the bishop is tied down to defend meekly the a6 pawn, and that's the whole point of this invasive rook. Surely it ties down the black pieces. But guess what black plays here? I've given you a bit of a clue, actually. So what would you play with black? So great game, great moves by both sides. Very interesting. But who has overstepped the mark? Bishop d7 is played, just offering the a6 pawn. What is this pawn sack? So it's just a pure exchange up for white here. Isn't black's ambitions, are they overly ambitious? If rook b6, this actually might just be holding things tight down to equality. For example, check, bishop b5, queen takes, Queen G7. Rook takes B5, unpinning, because otherwise Queen G1 was threatened. So unpinning just in time. This might actually be an even position. But no, Leela's going for a bit more adventurous with Rook takes A6, not Rook B6, which would give the option of snapping off this bishop. But no, Bishop B5, hitting the Rook and Knight. Rook takes E6, a seemingly important tempo game, but Queen G7 check. This is much stronger than Rook G8 check. On Rook G8 check, Queen G7, white has Rook G1. And here, you know, black's just losing. The queen's protected there as well. So white would have the advantage. But with Queen G7 check, very different story. King F1. Because if King H1, then black just plays Bishop takes here, E2, hitting that Rook. And if Rook E1, then Rook G8, threatening mate. And that's desperate for white. It's totally desperate. So so King F1, and you might think, well, okay, it's only a pin. Pins win games, though. There's an expression, pin and win. It's a really, for me, it's one of the more truer expressions that have been made about the game. It's quite a short one, pin and win. But it's very, very true, I find, in many, many games. The pin is worth quite a lot tactically and positionally. You know, there could be a number of moves where a pinned piece is still pinned and it's immobility for a large section of the game. But here, Rook G8 immediately spells out that Queen G1 checkmate is the big threat. The king moves to E1. Just to put that on the board, just aesthetically. So Queen G1 will be checkmate here. So the king moves. Not too many moves here, really, to think about. But alas, there's a real crushing tactical finish here. Can you guess what black plays in this position if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? So I think Stockfish fans will be delighted. See, I don't just post games that Leela wins. No. Black's plan win here. Can you find combination? You might want 5 seconds to pause the video. It's a very, very nice one to do with cutting out exit squares of the king. And a little bit counterintuitive, maybe. It's Bishop C3 check. It's actually inviting positively an exchange of queens after the knight takes. Check. There aren't too many options here. If Rook D2, then Rook G1 is checkmate. And the problem is now, of the queen takes, B takes. What does white do about Rook G1 here? It's a disaster. The pawn is stopping the king using D2. White desperately played Rook D8. And of taking... Yes, it's over there. And there's also this queen coming along. It's a crushing finish. That's it. Resigned or adjudicated here as a win for black. So a really crushing disaster for Leela there. 62-143. So Stockfish 11 is truly vicious tactically, as this game shows. When there's vicious dynamics in the position, like bishop pair, dangerous rooks, king safety issues, Stockfish 11 is going to pick up on a number of very interesting resources to celebrate those things, as this shows. I hope you got something from the opening treatments. Basically, this bishop on c4, if you play like e6 and a6, I think that's a good recipe against the bishop c4. I think people reuse bishop c4 from Gioacchino Piano systems. They think, oh, the bishop's quite good on c4. Not if black plays with that structure to torture the bishop necessarily. It's not very good, it seems, in general. Okay, so there's a free short and sweet anti-Sicilian course. Check out Kingscrusher TV/free anti-Sicilian. Grandmaster Kolovich mentions e6 as the major response, and also a quicker a6 than in this particular game, but a6 is still in this game. So yeah, a very interesting recipe against that classic bishop c4 move, and a very, very dynamic treatment from Stockfish in the game to that rook left, putting pressure on that d3 pawn. Very interesting, I thought. Okay, I hope you found it interesting too. Thanks very much.